Each principal will give an introduction of themselves, and then will give us a 15-minute or so presentation about their school and what they're doing.
Well, good afternoon. I didn't think I was going to go first. I was actually going to switch the name tags here, but it's a privilege to be among all of you to share the successes at Como Park Elementary. My name is Christine Vang, and I'm the principal at Como. I've been there for 8 years. And actually, I've been a graduate of St. Paul Public School. So St. Paul has been my home, and it was a privilege to come back and work and give to the community of St. Paul. So I feel very privileged to be here and share the successes with all of you. We have 490 or so students enrolled from a pre-K through grades 5, and are at about between 88 to 90% free and reduced. We have a very diverse population of students at Como. If you have been on our site and look at our student demographics, we also have about 52% of our students are English language learners, or ELL, and some of them have been in the United States for less than 3 years. And those students are language academy students, so Como Elementary is also a language academy site. We have 17% of our students are considered special education, or they have some kind of special education needs. And we also integrate or mainstream those, our special ed students into the classrooms. And so students that are at Como have either autism, DCD or developmentally cognitive delay, physical disabilities, SLD or learning disabilities, and so all kinds of special ed needs at Como. So as you can see, it really is, there's a lot of challenges, but we actually as a staff take those challenges and use them as, really looking at what are the strengths, and have been able to really look and find the individual strengths in the students and bring those forth and really help to support them in a way that has given us the kind of successes that we have been able to make in the 8 years that I've been at Como. So when I was reading through some of the questions as to, well, what are we doing at Como Park Elementary that is contributing to the successes of student closing the achievement gap and increasing student growth, and as all of you know, education is a pretty complex system. I was very fortunate to be able to have been at Como for the past 8 years. So I think the first thing to my mind was being able to have stability and staff and leadership. I think that has really contributed to the kind of work that we're able to bring forth in the staff and go deeper into some of the pieces that we know are working and helping students grow. And I think really belief, because for me it's really helping staff to believe that all children can learn and achieve at high standards. And sometimes I know that we say we believe all kids can learn, but how do we transform that belief into action, and making sure that that belief at the end of the day, or our results, are making an impact on student achievement. And so that is sort of the core of my belief, and the core that I bring to the staff to make sure that we transform our belief into action. I didn't bring any visual for all of you to to see all the things that we're doing at Como, but if you are able to do an airdrop on either your iPhone or however, I do have a document on, it's really a very nice visual on here that I did print out because I didn't want to waste paper, but if you are able to get onto an airdrop, I can airdrop some of the documents that I brought, and I can share that with you so that you can kind of see what some of the pieces that I'm going to go through and talk about here today. So the components that we are implementing at Como Park Elementary are all initiatives that the district has brought forth in the district, and what I and my staff have been able to do is really taking those components and really looking at how to implement them to fidelity, and looking at how to roll out the pieces to support the students that we have in the building. One of the first pieces that we really had talked about was the rigor in the curriculum and the standards. And so we have put together literacy and math professional developments in PLCs that our district has given us professional development time embedded in the last couple of years to be able to have that time in the building to go really deep with professional development and professional learning communities. That has made a huge difference in student learning and in the teaching and learning of our teachers. And during those times, teachers collaborate and engage in a professional learning community 2 times a week for 50 minutes, and one of the time is set aside for reading, and one of them is set aside for math. And so in that 50-minute period, teachers work together to really talk about students and student needs. I also have a document here that I didn't print out, but it really takes teachers through the data process. And in that meeting, teachers use the cyclical data process as a diagnostic tool to examine students' strengths, strategies, and skills, and really fine-tuning what the needs are, and then providing support in those areas for the students. And within that process, we embed the professional development right in it, because it is timely, quickly and timely, in order to support what the students' needs are. So when teachers are talking about students and looking at data and finding out what the needs are, there is professional development right there where if we know that our students is struggling in fluency. What are the strategies or ways to provide targeted interventions for that particular student? And so collaboratively, that is a process that we use within the PLCs to support student engagement, to support student needs, to support student learning. And that has been very successful, as I said. Our PD, professional development in literacy, has really, what we're finding is that we really need to provide teachers with some comprehensive professional development around content areas. And so helping teachers build content knowledge around essential components in the reading comprehension and the reading stages. And so in those meetings, when we meet, we really look at what are the different stages of student literacy reading, and what are the strategies to support those stages, and really helping teachers get a deep understanding of what those components are so that they can help deliver the instructions to the students when they're in the classroom. In math, it was really spending, and then in literacy, when the Common Core standards came out, it was really spending a lot of time to help teachers truly deeply understand what those high standards are, and analyzing the curriculum to see what gaps in the standards are missing and how do we fill those gaps. So a lot of times were spent on that as well. When teachers were able to study and look deeply at the standards, it really had deepened their instructional practices. That for us, it was not just about allowing all students to access the standards at that high level, but it was really about how do we ensure that students are performing at the high standards at all levels. So those were a lot of the conversations that take place in the professional learning community, and it was really how do we put students at the center and really figure out how to support them. In the math component, our district has actually done a lot of analyzing of these, looking at the math standards to our curriculum and really help to align that. And so right now, again, helping teachers with the content area of identifying what are the misconceptions. And what we're finding out is that we don't want to teach our students just how to memorize math, but really how do they really learn so they know math. And so helping teachers undo the skills that we have learned to just memorize to mastery, and what are those misconceptions that have been taught, and helping students to think and problem solve around math has really made a difference as well in our data in closing the increasing student growth in math. I want to just take all of you through a data process that we have here, and it's really it's a document that we use, I want to say religiously, but we really use it because it's a document that really gives us a laser-like focus on each individual student. And so what the data process does is we do in math, it's really looking at learning target, what are we focusing on, doing a pre-assessment, looking at students who are proficient, close, far, or needs more time, and then setting a goal in order to, as far as how many students are proficient, what is our goal, and looking at strategies, how are we going to move not just students who are close to proficient, but move every single one of those students from each of those categories to the next level. And what I'm finding out too, and my teachers finding out, is that we can't just make growth. We have to help students make accelerated growth if we are going to close the achievement gap. Now, all of that may seem like very pretty, makes a lot of sense, but it does take a lot of work, and it does take commitment, and it does take a lot of, again, collaboration among teachers and staff to make that happen. Some of the pieces in here is and then we not only have our data, but we have visual data. So it really gives teachers an overview of what their students are able to perform, what they're not able to perform, and how are they going to work collaboratively to support those students. One of the other pieces that I think have made a huge difference in us being able to beat the odd is really the concept of all students are students. So when students walk in the door, it's really not about it's my classroom and these are the students that I'm responsible for. It's the concept and idea of all the adults in the building are responsible for all the children in the building. And so when adults are seeing students in the hallway, they're helping support students getting from one place to the next. It's not just about my students, I'm responsible for this one. So it's that all focus, and really building that into the culture of the building has provided a huge support for all kids at Como Elementary. We have also created a multi-tier systems of support, or put together a multi-tier systems of support to outline support for literacy, math, and discipline. And so those are tier 1, 2, and 3. And so really a couple of years ago, wanting to look at what supports do we have in place for our students at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And in literacy, it was, when we looked at our data, we have the 80% of our students are in tier 2 and 3, and only 20% of our students are in tier 1. And so there's no way we're going to have the resources to provide targeted interventions to students. So the conversation among the staff was, how do we turn that triangle around? How do we get 80% of our students to be proficient and have the other 20% needing intervention? And so we have been having some pretty courageous conversations about how to do that. And I am excited to say that with some of the pieces that we have put in place, we're seeing the trend, or that triangle reverse, and talking to staff about how can teachers in the classroom provide the differentiation or targeted interventions to help the students, because I don't have the resources to bring in intervention teachers to do that. And so looking at how to better differentiate in the classroom to support students has made a huge difference as well. And that's spending time to really look at what support, what resources that we have in the building to allow for that to happen and for that to take place. Como has also been a part of the racial equity work, and that has really made a difference, I think, in the last couple of years when we instituted the CARE process in boosting our ability to support students and really accelerate student growth. And so some of the components that we've implemented in the building is that the 4 R's, so the culturally responsive teaching. And so what does culturally responsive teaching look like, sound like, feel like? And so we've spent some time really looking at and thinking about our students and what their needs are, and really, first of all, rigor is important. And how do you build relationships with students? Because as the saying goes, if students really don't care about what you know until they know you care about them. And so really building that bond and that relationship with students, and creating that, getting to know the students, that below the line information, so that you can, as you're planning your lesson, target students or support students in a way that's going to be real and relevant for them, to accelerate that engagement. So that student engagement has really made a difference, and really an overall building of, moving from, excuses to accountability. And so we don't, in the past, it's sort of like, yes, this student is coming in with these challenges, and there's nothing I can do about those challenges, but as a building, what is our job, and how are we going to help accelerate that student? And so taking that accountability piece has made, again, a huge impact on student learning. Technology is also a very critical component in student engagement. Are we done? Okay. So, those are some of the pieces that we've instituted. Obviously, it took a long period of time to kind of get to where we are, but really building on the foundations and the strengths in the building and the strengths in the students to really beat the odds. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Evangelist, St. Paul Music Academy. Some of you, if you're familiar with St. Paul, you might know our school is North End Elementary. about 5 years ago. I've been principal there for 5 years. I was at Franklin for 1 year, and after my first year of being principal, we co-located to the North End building. So Franklin was a music magnet, and North End was actually a school that was gender-based in the classrooms, and we brought our music school and North End, and for 1 year we operated under a roof with 2 separate programs. And then the next year we became, through lots of community input, staff, family, we became St. Paul Music Academy, because that was the one common thread that all of our community members felt was the piece that they really wanted to embrace. And so we are one of probably the only elementary school that has 3 music teachers. We are an Achievement Plus school, which means that we have resources for our families. We have a dental clinic in our building. We are Children's Dental. We serve about 300 of our kids, which means that they don't have to go out to get a dentist appointment and leave school. They're at school getting all the work done. We also serve the community. We have Eastside Family Center there that helps parents with any kind of housing need. We have Eastside Tutoring that tutors kindergarten, first, and second grade students throughout the day. They have a designated room. We have maybe 20, 30 tutors that come in. We're seeing great increases in our student achievement with that one-on-one tutoring. We have a mental health therapist from Thad Wilderson that we're paired with that gives one-on-one sessions with our students. We also we were part of a Target grant 2 years ago, and we had a complete library makeover. Part of what came with that was a food program that was food distribution for our families that was very well received. And then as the year, we did that for 1 year, and then this year it moved on to community boxes that we give our families. So once a month we have food distribution that continues, that is really helpful. We're about 94% poverty at our school. We, like Como, are also a language academy site, so we welcome students who are brand new to the country. We're approximately 56% EL. We also have 3 autism classrooms in our building. We serve about 625 students. We're one of a few schools that have full-day pre-K. In the past, we would retain maybe 25, 28% of our pre-K students. Last year, we retained 85% to go into our kindergarten. We're also part of McKnight Literacy Grant. 3 years ago, our school applied through McKnight, and we are partnering with UEI, University of Chicago. We are receiving professional development pre-K3, and we receive district support. We know that we need to parallel this PD that we're getting with our 4th and 5th grade teachers. So we work with our district coaches, our building coaches, literacy I'm talking, and sharing these same great practices so that we're having these vertical discussions so that the grant work carries on and moves on. Part of that grant work is a new assessment tool. If you're familiar with St. Paul schools, typically all of the elementary schools use Mondo as an assessment tool. We are one of 2 schools. It's our school in Wellstone that uses STEP. And a few Minneapolis schools use it. It's out of Chicago. It's very, very specific to what the child needs. It gets you right down to the point of error, and we're seeing really incredible opportunities for where the kids go for teaching. You know, we've had, yes, it is intense, but our other assessment tool is intense as well. But we're finding that the growth that our students are making, when we can pinpoint and look at it, it's incredible. So we're in the middle of that benchmark testing right now. We do 3 benchmarks through the year with this, and like I said, it's showing growth. And we are a school, you know, that we are, as Christina's saying, we are digging through our data at our PLCs. All St. Paul schools have these staff-embedded PDs during the day. You know, we take our kids and we look at their, you know, through a racial lens. Who are the kids? Where is that gap? How do we address specifically these particular kids? So in a PLC, it might be not all 25 kids in the classroom, but it's who are the kids who are not, what is that point where they're stuck? And how do we get in there and so that they can move and continue growth through that reading, through that math, whatever it is. We also, our racial equity work too, most of my staff has been through Beyond Diversity, and I'm waiting to hear, hopefully this week, we wrote another grant, the Target and United Way grant, to move our equity work further. So we're hoping to receive a grant through Innocent Classroom, Alex Pate's work. So continuing on the path, our 5 Essentials data is a tool that we use in St. Paul, and it's showing that we are a well-organized school. We have really strong program coherence, and our staff retention. When I first came, when we co-located, yes, I think 14 staff left that. It's hard, change is hard, but I would say over the last few years, I maybe have one person who leaves, or maybe one is retiring, but it's very low staff turnover, which it really helps us because we're on this. We're already, next year, our meetings this year in our PD today is like, okay, this is how we're planning our opening week lessons, in small group reading. So we're already looking ahead to the fall and thinking, how can we use the data that we have today to start the fall? We're giving the classroom teachers their class list. So on June 3rd, we have an extended staff meeting with UEI. We're looking, digging through their last benchmark. We're planning for small group. Let's really hit the ground running in the fall. So I think we have this sense of urgency that we never give up. We never say it can't be done. It can be done. We see our kids growing. We do celebrate the small wins because the big wins don't always show up in the public. But the small wins show up in our school, and I think the message that I need to get out, and it's always like, come and see our school, because I don't know that people know how many great things are going on. And it is intense, but it's a fun place to work. And our kids like it. The music is a piece that holds us together. Our parents love it. They come for concerts. We start violin in pre-K, and we know that it's more than math and reading. We know that there's a whole child to develop, and we celebrate with our students and families as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike McCullough. I'm the principal at Washington Technology Magnet School here in St. Paul, and it's real easy. It's the students, it's the teachers, and it's the broader community. That's the answer. And so every student wants to be successful. Every teacher wants their students to be successful in learning. And members of the broader community, whether it's parents or community members, politicians, folks such as yourself that are interested in education, want the schools to be successful and want the kids to be successful. Starting off with the students, at Washington we have 2,100 students in grades 6 through 12. We're the largest secondary school in either Minneapolis or St. Paul. And it's a unique opportunity in having kind of a middle school and high school all together. We were a middle school. We moved into the former Arlington building up on Rice Street. It was built in 1998, so it's a relatively new building. And we kept the students into 10th grade, then 11th grade, 12th grade, added 6th grade. And so we have about 300 students in each grade. So even though it's a large number of students, we're able to offer a large number of opportunities. We're divided into interdisciplinary teams. So each house or team has about 150 students, has about 8 teachers, support staff, and they really know those students. So when students come to school, it's just like the old Cheers motto. There's somebody there that knows their name, that there's somebody that is able to greet them, they know what's going on, they're able to make those relationships with students, which is critically important. And like I talk to our staff all the time, coming to school is the best part of the day for a lot of our kids. And so how can we make it even better? And so it's really focusing on those students. Like some of the other schools up here, we have a very diverse student population. About 93% of our kids receive free or reduced price lunch. About 55% of our students are Asian, primarily Hmong, but a growing number of Korean students from Burma or Myanmar, depending on your politics. And about 400 students, Korean students, kind of the newest immigrant group in St. Paul that is exciting for us to be working with that group as they start to navigate, similar to how the Hmong navigated the system, or however far you want to go back, the Germans or the Swedes or the Norwegians. Again, it's the same story. They came here for a better life, right? They get the American dream. So it's especially, I think, rewarding to work with some of our first generation American students, our second language learners, because they're working twice as hard. They know that they have to accelerate their learning, especially by the time that they get to middle school and high school. They came here for a reason. They weren't born here like I was, or like a lot of the folks that work at our school were, they came here for a reason. So it's really capitalizing on that. But it's supporting those students and again, finding a place for every student, no matter what the demographics are, no matter what the backgrounds of the students are. Fortunately, I have an 8th grader and a 10th grader that I live with. My son Matthew is in 8th grade. My daughter Madeline is in 10th grade, so I get to take my work home with me kind of every night. And you know, so we're doing stuff at school, and actually I was just working on Algebra 2, cosine squared theta. I had to learn all that stuff last night, and I was working with my daughter. But it's whatever I want for my kids at my house is the same thing as that I want for the kids at Washington as well. And so we try to share that with the rest of our staff, is that what are the standards we want? What are the expectations we have for those students? Some of the students that I work with at school need a little bit more support, whether they're second language learners, they have disabilities, they just haven't had some of the background experiences and knowledge. I mean, my wife and I have the opportunity to take our kids to Washington, D.C. I mean, we take our kids over to the University of Minnesota all the time. Some of our students haven't had that opportunity, so how do we provide those opportunities within the school setting to compensate for some of those things and raise all those expectations for students and give those students those experiences? I'm happy to report, I just got a report from one of my counselors yesterday, 100% of our graduating class of seniors this year has been accepted to college or some kind of post-secondary for this year. And so this is thank you. This is the second year in a row that we're at 100%, and so that's now the expectation, right? And so, because that's what I would want for my kids, that's what I expect my kids to be doing. And our kids at school want to be just as successful. So you can't wait till they're seniors, though, you know, May of their senior year, and say, let's start figuring out what we're going to do for college. We start in 6th grade. We have a partnership with the University of Minnesota, the Ramp Up to Readiness program. So starting in 6th grade, our students are getting college lessons. We also have a partner with the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. Larry Pogamiller and the gang over there do a great job of providing additional support. And once students get to high school, how do you fill out a FAFSA? Again, it's kind of ironic because we had a FAFSA night. You know, there's 300 parents there. The kids that qualify for financial aid find it more difficult to fill out the FAFSA form, right? Because it's all on the computer and all these numbers and social security numbers and taxes and stuff like that. The people such as myself that probably aren't going to qualify for a lot of need-based financial aid, they know how to navigate the system. But the people that could qualify, they have difficulty navigating the system. So how do you bridge that gap? Well, we can teach people how to navigate the system, but you have to individualize it to each student, and you have to provide those opportunities for parents to help their kids be successful. So again, the first piece is the student, and really focusing on the student, whether it's making them feel welcome at school, solving issues they have. I mean, it's middle school, right? We remember middle school. It's, you know, it's who said this and who said that, and he said this and he said that. And I was just talking to a parent this morning. It's like, turn off the Facebook, get rid of the Facebook, you know, because the parents, and again, we talk about, you know, kind of the generation next and things like that. And Christine was saying, well, I'm going to airdrop this to you. I didn't see everybody pick up their iPads, but I mean, if you are at Washington, that'd be no big deal. I mean, everybody has an iPad in the St. Paul Public Schools secondary anyway, at least now, and moving to elementary next year. And that's how they communicate. They would just airdrop it and they would get the presentation. And so it's personalizing some of that learning. We have a big personalized learning program. And what that is, it's not just the iPads, but in this section, some of you might want to sit and listen to us talk. Another group, they might want to just do the research on their own. They just go over in the corner and they can do stuff on the computer. Another group, they might want to work together and try to solve the problem and come up with some solutions of you know, closing the achievement gap. But it's personalizing it to each individual group. And I've had the opportunity to work with some great teachers, and that's kind of moving into the second part of teachers. Teachers are incredible, and we've all had teachers in our lives before, and no, I can tell you, my high school teachers, my elementary teacher, that made a difference in my life. And so how do we, again, they talk about PLCs, which are professional learning communities, right? So we get groups of teachers working together. How do we get the best teachers to institutionalize those practices so that we have the best teachers doing the same thing as all of the teachers are doing, providing those experiences to all students? And so really having that collaboration between teachers. I mean, when I started in this business 30 years ago, it was you went in your room and you shut the door and you did whatever you wanted to do, and it was kind of your little kingdom, and every once in a while an administrator would walk in and say, okay, the kids are quiet, they're all working, and that was your evaluation for the year, and you'd walk out. Whereas now, our teachers are forced, and well, right now at Washington, I just left a biology meeting, and we were having this great discussion on what are biology standards and how much of the biology summative assessments or their final grade should be based on lab work, and how much should be based on kind of paperwork or summative assessments or things like that. So again, it's having teachers working together to develop those best practices that's critical, and it needs to be supported not only structurally within the school, but also organizationally. So figuring out, how do you set aside time for teachers to meet? How do you develop systems so that they can look at data? How do you help them develop assessments that are really measuring what they need to be measuring against the standards? And so that teacher piece is critical. It's not just the teachers having the favorite teacher that has good rapport with students, but how can you have teachers, again, collaborate with each other, working with professional learning communities in helping the kids be more successful. At Washington, we also have something, these houses or teams, they said, they're called interdisciplinary teams. So we have all of the teachers that are working with a specific group of students meeting together on a regular basis. So like ours are meeting this Friday. So because all of the teachers, whether it's the English, the math, the social studies, the science, the special ed, the ELL, they all have an interest on how a specific student is doing. And chances are one of them has a good relationship with the student or knows what's going on. And again, there's stories more countless than you could, go on all afternoon about kids that are homeless, or we just had a student whose mother passed away. And so everybody doesn't know that, and having the counselor have to know all that information doesn't help the student. But if all of the teachers know how to work together, or that somebody doesn't like wearing glasses, right? And so if you sit them in the front of the classroom, they're going to do a lot better than if you sit them in the back of the classroom, even though their parents gave them glasses. Little things like that where teachers can work together and help those students be successful. But again, our job as principals is to support teachers and help teachers be more effective. And we've got a lot of other people in the building that do that, counselors and social workers and specialists and things like that. But all of our job is to help teachers work with kids and help them be more successful. We have a rather unique program at Washington in our extended day program. Again, it's another opportunity as we were looking at students. Our kids are just as smart as any other kids. They just need more time sometimes because of their background knowledge. They just need more support or more different kinds of strategies. So at Washington, all 2,100 of our students participate in the extended day program. So it's an extra hour of school from the first day of school till the last day of school. And again, as a society, why do we send kids out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, especially in St. Paul, Minnesota? I mean, our kids are not going to hockey camp or horseback riding or whatever. They're going to situations where maybe they don't have the internet at home. Maybe they don't have, athletics facilities, great parks and things like that at home. So, but we've got all that at school, right? I mean, at our school, we've got 1,000 computers. Every kid's got an iPad. We've got computer labs, wireless, great resources. Why don't we extend that learning to support kids? And it doesn't have to be just the regular, okay, we're gonna have another hour, let's do another 100 math problems. It's at Washington divided into enrichment opportunities, things like Lego robotics, book clubs. We just had a math teacher that's doing a Hunger Games book club, is doing a fun activity like that. Cultural activities where students can get more in touch with their cultural roots. We do a Hmong dance program, a Karen club. We do an African American literature. I mean, we've got great resources in this community. It's just taking advantage of those. We have YMCA come into our building. We have Science Museum come into our building during that extended day. We send our kids over to Como Park Zoo. It's actually a reading program where they read about critters, and then they go over to Como Zoo, and they actually get to get up behind the scenes, feed the animals, and all that kind of fun stuff. And Como Zoo is right in our neighborhood. It's free. It's something that, again, my kids, we go to Como Zoo all the time, right? Because I'm cheap and it's free, right? And but kids that live in the neighborhood don't always have that opportunity. The Minnesota History Center, they've got the big Hmong exhibit. We did our 6th grade conferences there. We brought, instead of having conferences at school, we brought all the parents down there. They got to go through the exhibits for free. I mean, how great is that? It's right in the community. It's actually in our attendance area at Washington, but they don't have always the opportunities or know that, you know, and again, nothing against the History Center. Love the History Center, right? We've got a great partnership with them, but if you have to pay admission for yourself and your kids and your family to get into the History Center, it's free on Tuesdays, by the way, but if you have to pay admission to get in, then that's a barrier that's going to prevent you from accessing something that could be a really great resource. And that kind of leads into the larger community piece. And part of it is I do feel privileged to work at the St. Paul Public Schools. I grew up in Minneapolis under Mayor Fraser, worked or graduated from Roosevelt High School in 1980, and so I know that then Mayor Fraser obviously gets education in St. Paul. Mayor Coleman gets education. He's made that a priority. Our superintendent of schools, I mean, she's a second language learner, and she's the superintendent of schools. I mean, that's incredible. We know that Governor Dayton gets education, and again, we can argue about which is the right strategy and what he thinks his priority strategy and what another priority strategy is, but he certainly supports education. Certainly at the national level, President Obama has been big on supporting education, specifically in the community college piece. And again, back to the college thing and President Obama, with the auspice of higher education is their newest research, and what they're talking to our students about is this whole 1-2-7 concept. Is that, yes, everybody's going to college, but everybody doesn't have to go to a four-year college and get a liberal arts degree and wind up with $100,000 of debt, right? I mean, in society moving forward, there's one person that needs an advanced degree. There's two people in society that need kind of a bachelor's level kind of degree, but there's 7 people that need some kind of training, whether it's computer programming or, you know, plumbing or things like that. Some of those things that can't be outsourced. Be an electrician, right? Figure out how, you know, the electrician that wires our school makes more than any teacher in the school, the chief electrician. I mean, he's sitting there making $60 an hour. He drives a Range Rover to work. I mean, why not, if you have a skill and interest in that area, but you've got to do something. You've got to do something beyond high school. And so to really develop those interests and to really encourage students in those interests and break down some of those barriers. Again, for a lot of us, applying to a university, figuring out, you know, to go and get books and to register on time and things like that, that's no problem. We can figure that out. However, if you haven't played the game, if you haven't gone through college yourself, it's difficult for you to help your son or daughter. So some of our college counselors work with our kids all summer long. It's called the Summer Nudge Program. So they've got their list of all the seniors, and they're calling them up. Have you got your books? Have you registered for your dorms? Have you bought your laundry bag? Have you done all of these things, so that students are ready to enter college and more prepared to enter college for some of the logistical pieces, as well as just getting a high enough test score and applying and getting in. So again, it's all of those things working together, but it's starting with the students. What are the needs of the students, and how do we really support them? How do we help them nourish their dreams and be part of the great American dream, right? How do we work with teachers in order, I mean, teaching, for those of you who've been teachers, teaching is hard work. I mean, because that's kind of an understatement. I mean, because for teachers that are your best teachers, they bring this work home with them. I mean, and then, you know, unfortunately, teachers are as bad as kids with the electronics. I was emailing my curriculum coordinator until 10 o'clock last night. We were trying to figure out this thing on this MCA testing. We're doing this MCA testing, and so they're thinking about creative lessons all night long and emailing each other and sharing things, but how do you support that teachers working together? And then how do you work with the larger community so that the community can realize some of those goals and dreams they have for the kids that go to school here? So that.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, my name's Doug Revsbeck, and I'm the principal at Harding High School. It's on the east side of St. Paul. I might reference this a little bit, but believe me, I'm not going to go through every detail. But tell you a little bit about Harding. Harding is 2,000 students, and we're 9 through 12. And at Harding High School, there's been a change demographically over the last 15 years. Right now we have 93% students with free and reduced lunch. There's 8% white, and 25% African American, and 50% Southeast Asian mostly, as well as 15% Latino and 2% Native American. We're also the citywide magnet for American Indian Studies. We draw from all over the city, and we are an IB school. International Baccalaureate is made up of two components. You have the DP component, which is the 11th and 12th grade, and it's a choice-based program. Then you have the MYP, and MYP is 9th and 10th grade, and that's mostly in lesson design. A lot of it is lesson design based on concepts, critical thinking, higher order thinking skills, and we're just bringing that into our school right now. That we should be authorized next fall. And one of the things I'm really excited about is that's about sustainability. MYP and DP don't go away. And I think that's what teachers are really excited about, because they're really pouring a lot of their efforts into designing larger, big idea-based units. It's no longer the old textbook world where you can just go from chapter to chapter or teach certain ways based on knowledge-based thinking. And really that's the idea that we want in the future, and I'll get into this a little bit later. It's about building innovators. We want our students to create and be innovative. We cannot just sit and get in our classrooms, and our teachers, just like you said, they are phenomenal at making sure our students are working in groups, they're thinking, they're designing, they're using iPads now. And so we're seeing more and more of that personalized learning going on in our school. We also have a daycare. We're the only high school or school with a daycare center. We have a clinic. We're one of the few, I don't know any other high school has a clinic other than Gordon Parks. We have a parent learning center called Eastside Hub. You've heard of the Hub Center down there. Well, we just worked in a design mode about 3 or 4 years ago, and that now is one of the only really adult learning centers on the east side. So I'm really happy to say that parent learning increases student learning. And so I want it right in our backyard. So it's great to see that really growing. We're seeing a lot of families coming to our school. Literally, it's right adjacent to school by the hockey rink over there. Just like Washington, we have 40 clubs. There's tons of clubs after school. And the nice thing we just started this year is we don't just offer breakfast and lunch. We're also serving dinner at 3:30. So the students who want to eat late in the day, if they're staying around for sports or athletics or clubs or whatever it is, they have more food and more nourishment to support them. We have an NJROTC program. It's one of the largest in the state. They just won the Distinguished Unit Award, which is only 20% in the country. And we're really proud of that program. That provides a tremendous amount of service, and it really builds confidence for our young people. NJROTC is one of the greatest things that St. Paul has. We're really fortunate to have it in our city. Now, with the yellow sheet of paper here, I'm going to reference a few things. The reason I brought this with is because I want to just, because I'm an old white guy, and I work in one of the most diverse schools literally in Minnesota, and I'm darn lucky. And really, I'm on a journey, there's no question about it, of building a racial consciousness of my own. And this is something that our whole school is really getting better at, and it is our district initiative, but it's so important for me, especially as a white leader, to understand what it is like to be a racial equity leader and to communicate that with students and staff. And I'm also learning more and more that to be a racial equity leader, it's about bringing student voice into the leadership work. And I could see in the next few years, we will be seeing more and more student leaders really helping all of us move the work forward, the work of equity. And when I think about equity, or if I think about the achievement gap, I'd like to call it the access and opportunity gap, because that's what we have control of at our school. We control access and we control opportunity. So when it comes right down to it, when you have an IB program or an MYP program or an AVID program like we have at Harding, we're really looking at ensuring that we're taking care of the underserved students. Students who normally were not accessing those programs are right in front of us. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that those students are part of those programs and services in our building. And especially when it comes to accelerating learning. So we've heard a lot about accelerating learning, personalized learning. You talked about strength-based. A lot of these words are the words we hear in education today. But for myself, an old Roosevelt grad, a few years before this guy, not many years before him, but I was after Jesse Ventura. So the reason I put this, because you see that there's variables on the left side. These variables are really key indicators that I think help us understand the shifts that we've been making in education. And when you think of the barriers and the conflicts that we've had to deal with and the leadership styles we've had, some of these have really added to the deficit-based thinking we've had. And that's what we're trying to break down. We're trying to get rid of deficit thinking and do everything we can to really build strengths in our students and know they come with strengths. They're gifted when they walk in the door, and we need to identify those gifts. We need to take advantage of knowing those gifts of our students. And so a lot of it is in our mindset. And you'll see a shift in mindset from what is a dependent learner. I think we've created an epidemic of dependent learners if you look at Yvette Jackson and some of the work of some of the others, when you look at the work we're doing now, it's to create independent learners. We want to be able to set them aside and work on their own, like they were talking about here. We want to see our students own their own learning. If anything, that's what it's all about, ownership of learning. Students in the past might have come with us with motivation and independent skills back in the 90s. Sure, as teachers, we love that. Today, we have to build those tools. That's our job, to personalize that learning so they become independent too. We can't just figure they're going to show up and become independent learners in today's world. And so you'll see that in the first area, the mindset, the change from going from teach those who want to learn to where now it is all means all, period. It's all, these are our students, we've talked about it all the way across here. It's all means all. We're creating independent learners and personalizing that learning for them. At the bottom, these are the state and district influences that I've looked at. Now this is just something I put together because I'm part of a 5-year grant. It's a research grant with the University of Minnesota. Jen York Barr, Peter Demerath is here. And I've been fortunate as a leader myself, because when you look at what it takes to beat the odds, you need support as a leader. It isn't just my job. It's not a hero thing anymore. It's not about the principal does everything. Believe me, that's not happening. It's about what I do as a leader to make sure that we're flooded with leaders in our building. Students, adults, teachers, parents. And so what I focus on are 3 pillars. I focus on how much can I build that culture of collaboration and shared practices. That's really crucial in our schools, sharing our practices. It's no longer isolating people in their room, closing the door and teaching students, only your students. They're all our students. And so collaboration is key. Capacity building, as a leader, how can I keep building capacity? And how can I support my own capacity with coaches and mentors and any other learning that is available to me? And then the other one is dealing with sustainability. We don't want something to just show up for a year or two. When we get into something, we want it to be sustainable. And we want it to have momentum. They even say momentum trumps perfection. Because momentum's everything when we see people start to move and we see that critical mass taking place. And for us, an area that was so crucial was between the 2008 and 2011 year, in the middle there. Those are the years, I was in my early years at Harding. I've been there 8 years now. However, I started there in '98. So this is really a 17-year journey of my own. But those years from 2008 to 2011 really built some key structures and some capacity, some collaboration and momentum. And those were crucial during those years, because one of the greatest things that happened at Harding is we brought in embedded time. Teachers, embedded time, the PLCs we talked about. When teachers have time to talk and share, great things happen. And what we're really looking for in our schools is a school culture that really believes in reflection and reflective practices. Teachers need to think about their thinking. They benefit from thinking about their thinking. They like to self-evaluate what's most effective. And we have so many amazing staff in our schools that can do this work, and that's really what feeds the possibilities of all of our students achieving at high levels. And it helps us build those expectations and understand what it means to help our students get there. So the embedded time was so crucial. And then what happened in those years also is that we as a school were looking more and more at what it is that our students need to be successful for their entire lives. They have to have literacy. Literacy is the main thing. Keeping the main thing, keeping it simple, going deep. Everything about literacy, whether it's digital literacy, speaking literacy, writing literacy, reading literacy, critical thinking skills literacy, can go on and on and on. But if we're moving students with the tools to become independent leaders and innovators in the future, it really is about, are we keeping the main thing as we get better at understanding culturally relevant teaching and culturally responsive teaching. That's a huge piece of getting better at literacy, getting to know our students better and their experiences, what it's like in terms of understanding the variety of learners that we have in our school, and getting better at differentiation at a high school level is very different than getting better at differentiation at an elementary school, because we have 150 students. It's very challenging work. You'll notice also getting down in there, the data piece. I think as a high school principal, the data means everything to me. And I never knew it at an earlier stage in my career how important it was, and now it is so crucial in everything I do. I'm looking at a data dashboard that we've created over the last 4 or 5 years, and I meet with data coaches in my building regularly, and we keep looking at what is it we want to know to make sure that every teacher can have information, all the teams have information, all of our systems have information, everything that guides and helps us understand progress in our building, we need it real time. It can't just show up too late. So I'm looking at more and more how we can digitalize this and get it to become part of a system rather than coming more organic. Right now it's organic within our school. We develop all the data, but it is sent to the people when they need it. If they need it on a weekly basis, they're getting it on a weekly basis of every student. And it's formative because we're there to make sure we're ensuring progress. We're not just there to say what happened. It's what are we doing to make the adjustments so that all of our students, especially when you're using it through a racial equity lens, what are we doing to make sure that those students who are underserved are really making accelerated progress? And now just speaking about acceleration is that when you look at these years and you look at No Child Left Behind, which was really a deficit-based model, No Child Left Behind put us into thinking about how to intervene and support really with that deficit-based thinking. It was a burning platform, I must say. It scared us, but in reality, it shouldn't have really caused students not to graduate from high school, and it can't really be the ultimate reason why your school is no longer going to exist. So, yeah, it has a purpose, but as you look at moving away from that deficit-based thinking with No Child Left Behind, now we're looking at college and career readiness. It makes total sense. It makes total sense. Our students should envision themselves as people that are getting into a college and career area the day they walk into elementary school. And when they get into high school, the assessments need to be about success in the future, not just whether they're going to succeed in this class or whatever. So our students need to really build that belief in themselves that this is where I'm going to be and I'm going to measure my progress to get there. And it isn't just four-year college. One of my biggest goals is to find a way for us to articulate better seamless transitions for students and start them early. The concurrent enrollment is huge. If we don't get better at concurrent enrollment, then we are doing a disservice to our students, especially our urban students who many of them are coming with special, or they're underserved. We can't do that. They need to be on the front end of getting this access in 9th and 10th grade. I'd love to see all of our students have a college credit by 10th grade. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what it is. If they have something under their belt that they've succeeded in that deals with post-secondary, that will really increase confidence. And our students, once confidence comes, momentum builds. Momentum builds. And then that personalization. I talked to a student in 9th grade when he was in 9th grade the other day. Now this just happens to be the student who got into 8 Ivy League schools. Sitting in my office with Roman, and I said, Roman, tell me about 9th grade. And he says, I had no clue. I didn't know what I was going to take, and I wasn't sure how well I'd do in high school. I was nervous. Nobody really talked to me much about how to be successful in high school. Well, I said, what happened after that? And Roman said, well, some people got to know me pretty well, and they gave me some good advice to try this and try that. Some people were helping him and supporting him with taking some risks. And he said, by the time I was in 11th grade, I couldn't stop taking everything I could take and working as hard as I could because it caught fire. And he did really well, obviously, and he chose MIT, and that's exciting. He didn't even go to an Ivy school. But there's a lot of stories like Roman. When we look at our students, that's the story every one of our students should be saying. Sure, you're coming into 9th grade and you don't quite understand all this stuff, but in the end, as principals and as teachers and everybody working with students and our partners, 3M, oh my God, we're the luckiest school in the world to have 3M. But they play a major role in this as well. But helping our students build the confidence and helping them to become independent learners rather than a dependent learner. Independent learner doesn't mean deficit, doesn't mean they don't have skills. It just means that they haven't learned to be independent yet. And so I'm just kind of getting to the point as a high school principal knowing that I am so lucky, especially as a white male working in St. Paul and working at Harding. I pinch myself every morning. It's just great, yeah.
Thank you very much. That was just wonderful. We know that successful schools have to have fabulous principals, and hearing all the things you're doing is just wonderful. I have some questions for you. First of all, one of our attendees, I'll take some more here, okay, thank you, wants to thank all the principals for coming today and for speaking at our forum. And in the last 5 years, this is the most encouraging forum they have heard. What can we in the community do to support you in your work?
come and see us.
Yes.
Come into the schools. I keep asking. We need to get the message out, all the great things going on in the schools. You hear things in the paper and it's not always the most positive. Come into our schools and see us. All of us are very welcoming. Come and see us.
Okay. Studies have revealed that there are some cultural implications and barriers that impact historically underrepresented students' performance on standardized tests and exams in the classroom and everywhere. What supports do these students need, and what supports do you have for them?
I think part of it is pulling away some of the barriers on assessments. And if you're assessing, does the student, can the student fill out a bunch of little bubbles on a sheet of paper? Well, then standardized tests are a pretty good measure of that. Whereas if you're trying to determine if a student understands mitosis or photosynthesis, maybe there's other ways, especially with the increase of technology and personalized learning, that students can demonstrate their learning. And I think with this personalized learning or this approach to that, teachers are getting better at assessing students, and so that there's ways that they are, I know in elementary school, and again, I'm just, that if you want to know how students learn how to read or how well they can read, you have them read to you, right? Not just fill in a bunch of bubbles on a piece of paper. And so, like Bobby was saying, it's a lot more intensive, staff intensive, to do some of those assessments, but it's really measuring what the standards are trying to.
What tools are available for teachers to improve their peers, student feedback, district, internet, Q&As, test scores?
Well, this is the first, I know that this is the first year that we're doing student engagement surveys as part of the teacher development evaluation process. So I know our teachers have been really looking through that lens to see, get a student perspective. And
One thing that I really attribute to improved practices over the last 7 or 8 years at Harding is when you bring teachers together with purpose, and that purpose is to look at their students and ensure that every student learns, and they look at some kind of an organizational structure in their conversations, they all grow. I think teachers understand that now sharing practice is about improvement, and it's about that reflection about how well they're looking at what works best in their classroom and in the school. So if we keep asking that question in our teams when they're collaborating, what works best and who didn't work for it?
And I was just going to add to that too, Doug, that I always tell my teachers that we have all the resources that we need in the building, because the teachers are the resources, and they all bring knowledge and skills. And so how do we open that door? And both of you talked about it, is that collaboration of having teachers be able to go to other classrooms, see what's happening there, take the best practices from there, bring it into their classroom. Maybe they just need to tweak some things, but that learning from each other is critical. And so allowing and giving time for teachers to do that will develop their practices.
I think it trumps teacher evaluation. Right now, teacher evaluation is such a big thing, and you hear it's going to be huge next year. Teacher collaboration trumps it every single time. Or teacher collaboration trumps teacher evaluation. When they can work together in a trusting relationship where they know they're supporting each other, that will trump the evaluation. Nothing wrong with evaluation. I get it. I think the feedback will be helpful too. But when they're working with their peers and they're looking at the same classrooms and they're self-evaluating what works best, that's really where growth happens. It happens because of the reflective work going on with everybody in our building, so that they're all thinking about what works best in their classroom.
And not to keep dragging this on, but I really think that as teachers see themselves as learners, not just as practitioners, that is where the growth happens. So, and then again, a lot of learning is happening in the actual school, working with each other. But again, we're doing this iPad rollout this year and personalized learning. Well, we didn't know anything about iPads, but Farmington is only 50 miles away, and they've been doing it for 3.5 years. So we hopped in the car and we drove down there and we went to some classrooms, and we copied some of the stuff that they were doing, and quite frankly, I think we're doing some stuff better than the stuff that they're doing down there. But again, it's Harvest Prep over in Minneapolis is a charter school over in Minneapolis, and again, we're a public system and they're a charter school, but they've got great growth rate. They've got 95% kids of color, and 70-80% of their kids are proficient on reading and math assessments. What are they doing? I mean, they're right over here. Hop in the car and go find out. So I mean, it's what's going on in the building, but it's also being open to learn about new ways of doing things and learn from different venues.
And a question that follows up on that. They're asking, do you have, well, for one thing, how do you find the money to pay the teachers to stay after school and do the professional learning communities?
The professional learning communities are within the school day.
Okay.
That is common with all of us.
Yeah, it's embedded.
It's embedded in our day.
It's in the contract too.
Okay. And for Mike and the others, how are you able to afford the 1 hour extended day in terms of money or in terms of adjusting your teacher's contract? Is the extra hour voluntary for teachers?
So again, that's a whole nother presentation. Again, invite you to come over to Washington anytime and see it. But again, we do have additional resources from both the federal government and the state government. All of our schools do, based on the number of students that receive free or reduced price lunch. And so we use those resources, we leverage those against, again, there's community organizations and groups and things like that that want to be part of the schools, but it's hard for me to pull kids out of their class every week so that they can participate in a science museum class, for example, or a Como Zoo class or things like that. But there are partners within the community, the YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs, a number of different partners within the community that want to be a part of it. So it's how do you leverage existing resources within the district. We operate just like the other schools on a number of different grants, state grants, federal grants, things like that, in order to help operationalize those.
Good, thank you. In the elementary, do you have the reading corps coming to your schools?
Yes, at Como Park Elementary, we were one of the first participants in the Reading Corps program when it came to St. Paul Public School. And we have 4 Reading Corps members right now at Como in the pre-K through grade 3. And they work closely with my internal coach to provide targeted interventions with students. And that has made a huge difference as well in terms of getting the students and filling in the gaps for what students are missing. So yes.
Wonderful.
And we have 2 Minnesota Reading Corps workers at our school, and along with that, like I had mentioned too, we have Eastside Tutoring that actually affects more students in our school.
Okay, and at the high school level, do all students complete post-secondary credits while in high school?
Well, I was trying to get at that. I wish they could. I think there needs to be some kind of an arrangement where we know our students have more opportunities and access to that. Right now, it's not that many that are getting posted. Right now we don't see too many because of PSEO. PSEO requires a lot of transportation, a lot of time, and it cuts in the day. And I'm thinking that we need to really break the mold on this one and figure it out. We have so many different colleges and resources in our community, the tech, the community colleges, and you hear about these intermediate schools that have career programs for their students, and it's very accessible. 916, 917, North Hennepin. I think in St. Paul, and especially within our Minneapolis-St. Paul area, that's something we're missing. And that way we could say the door's open, they've had great opportunities, and they are accessing post-secondary opportunities as early as possible. And it should overlap our system. It should be part of secondary. Secondary and post-secondary need to come together. It shouldn't be a break-off that once you leave high school, then you figure it out. We should be overlapping these two more and more. And I know our state is working on it, and I read Joe Nathan's articles all the time. He's really big on it, but it's something that it's a sense of urgency.
And again, since this is a policy group, we can go down a little bit deeper into the weeds. We have a program, College in the Schools, with University of Minnesota partnership. So we actually have sections of a college class that are taught at Washington by a Washington teacher, but it's actually a section of a University of Minnesota class, right? So anatomy and physiology, physics, a number of different classes. The teacher, the way it's structured, is like a TA at the University of Minnesota, so they're like a graduate assistant would be over at the University of Minnesota, and so it's actually easier for us to teach a University of Minnesota College in the Schools class than it is to teach a St. Paul College class, because St. Paul College is part of MnSCU, and so they have a different credentialing system. Generally, they have to have a a master's in that content area. So again, like Doug says, it seems strange that we could be giving out transcripted University of Minnesota credits that are good anywhere, right, in the world, but that we can't have a partnership with St. Paul College, which is just down Rice Street from our school, and be doing, freshman literature or comp or things like that. And so again, that's a systemic thing that we continue to work on. But I think, and again, at Washington, our philosophy is we want to offer those programs for PSEO, and again, PSEO is a great program, great opportunity. That's great for some kids, right, to not go to the high school, actual physical high school for all or part of their school day and actually go to St. Thomas or the University of Minnesota, things like that. That's not great for all kids in all content areas. You know what I'm saying? Some kids really have a special likeness or affinity or whatever for math, and they might want to PSEO into those classes. But if I can offer those classes on campus at Washington with the same level of rigor at the University of Minnesota, well, then I get to keep those kids as the NJROTC commander, as the captain of the swim team, as those different activities. So it's how do we bring the college experience to the high school rather than taking all these high school kids and shipping them off to colleges.
Okay, you talked about using data. If the opt-out movement succeeds in getting more and more families to opt out of standardized tests, how will that affect your ability to close the academic outcomes?
Well, the type of data I'm talking about is the data that I'm looking at what teams in the building want, what individual teachers, the support staff, the intervention people, everybody in our school, they need data in their hands. MCAs are, at the end of the year, kind of a summative data that sometimes is useful for transitions. If you're looking at that, I think its current use now has shifted from a purpose of where they look at whether students are meeting graduation requirement testing wise, or whether they look at schools that are making adequate yearly progress. So the purpose of the MCAs, I'm sort of wondering why it's there anymore, because it doesn't really serve for either purpose anymore. But it's still a data point that we can look at, but it doesn't say it. I'm wondering when they're going to change that. Right now it just seems to be something neat. I hear they're going to move out of that and then get in a new data system that is more college and career readiness focused, something that ACT is involved with the state of Minnesota with, and that may not be for another year or so, but right now the MCAs are not really serving the purpose that I can see. I don't know about you guys.
Availability of resources is an important component of success, but is often a significant barrier. What have you done to acquire resources and sustain those resources? That is teachers, computers, PLCs, DDs, etc.
Well, I think all of our schools, we talked about independent grants, and again, we have a couple board members here. The St. Paul Public Schools has been great at acquiring resources. The people of St. Paul, the voters of St. Paul, approving the referendum for technology and personalized learning in the last few years. So again, the community's been very supportive of schools. So St. Paul is kind of pulling their weight. I think the state of Minnesota, and again, you said, what can you do? In the next week, contact your legislator, right? Because they're deciding, what the funding is going to be for the next year. And if they're talking about a 1% formula increase, and inflation is going to go up for 2%, you're cutting 1%. It's pretty easy. You can talk about counselors or pre-K or all the programs you want, but if you are giving an increase of less than inflation, what you're doing is saying you're cutting, you've got to cut some programs, you got to cut some bodies or programs or some of these extra things that we're talking about. So that's the one thing that folks can do, obviously. But the other thing is we're writing grants all the time, and you heard people talking about grants, and again, there's been Ecolab is a great partner in St. Paul. 3M has been a great partner in St. Paul. Target has been a great partner in St. Paul. A lot of corporations have realized this, but they don't want to just give money away. They want to give money with a specific focus. And so if they can see things that are really making a difference, it's just like us. If I can see something that's making a difference, I would much rather give money to that cause than if it's just, here's something that's worthy and write us a check and maybe we'll do something with it. But again, so it's that whole community aspect between writing grants, between corporations, federal grants, state grants. I mean, that's, you know, kind of a second job for most of us in the evening, is writing grants and figuring out how to manage that. And again, our district has been very supportive in that as well. We've got a whole grants office that helps with the verbiage and, you know, how to do deadlines and things like that.
I know it'd be really nice to be able to function without having to write grants, wouldn't it? Okay, how long did it take you to shift your building culture from deficit-based, as in the kids come in with so many home-based problems that we can't fix, to asset-based or accountability-based? What schools can do to correct it now? What were the barriers and how did you overcome them?
Christine?
I'm sure you can answer it in 2 minutes. Good to know.
I think you can feel a culture when you walk into a building, and I know it's taken, you know, it didn't happen my first step in the door, but I think, you know, you build, you know, the staff around you, you know, we have a very strong belief system, and like I said, our turnover has really reduced, and I think it's building that community of people who are committed to the students that you serve in your school. And
I think, you know, we talk about relationships, so how do we, you know, we work with teachers on how to build relationships with the students, getting to know the families, getting to know our families, and participating in events that bring families out. You know, I have, you know, families that come and they want to see the teachers be a part of that. So it's really about creating a community in the school building. We talked about creating our school as schools that we want to send our students to. So as a staff, we looked at what are the components in the building. If we don't want to send our students to this school, how do we change that? And so that our students can function and be successful. So those components are critical in building a school culture where students are thriving, where teachers want to come to work, and there's a lot of supports to make learning happen and take place. So those are so that relationship is critical in forming that.
Okay, I'm going to try to combine these now as time is running out. Do you have opportunities to meet with other principals in your district? And how can you translate what you're doing to more rural areas of Minnesota, give them the information and the type of programming you're doing without help from places like the, you know, universities' resources?
well, we do meet in groups. In fact, Mike and I were together yesterday as part of our vertical. We have principal PLCs that are mixing up with, you know, elementary, middle school, high school, so that we can learn from each other and see that pathway. We also share it, I know I see our MESPA for elementary, you know, we share with principals from other areas as well. I don't know if you guys have.
I'm part of that. I'm part of a grant. It's not a money grant. It's more of a partnership. And fortunately, it's really been wonderful for me because I'm working as a high school principal and I partner with middle school, elementary, and 2 charter schools, which is really interesting for me. It's been a great learning journey to understand the complexities of a charter school, elementary, and to get to know more and more about what's really happening at the middle school. We've been meeting for 5 years, although staff have changed over the years, but it's still been a very unique opportunity for me, and I don't think that happens out there with principals in general. It's just been a rare piece that I've been fortunate to have.
With our McKnight grant as well, we meet every few months with principals. There's charter, there's Minneapolis, and that's really interesting too to you know, be able to talk about, you know, what we're seeing with growth, with professional development, with what we're seeing our students do across different areas of in the cities.
And the school district does a really good job with being a larger school district, providing opportunities for principals to meet once a month. And then we do have the principal PLCs, as Bobby said, where we have cross elementary, high school meeting to visit each other's school and really share best practices that are working with each building with each other. And I personally reach out to just colleagues, and we meet once a month to share best practices and support each other through that way as well, and being able to have those colleagues to reach out to on our own time, of course. And I think your question about how to bring this to the rural area is, I think we talked a lot about best practices. And so best practices is best practices, and it doesn't matter if you move it here or there, about regarding teacher collaboration, really being focused and targeted. So those pieces of best practices can be taken out to any building and implement.
I think one other thing too, that with our student teachers, we have partnership with Bethel and River Falls, is really bringing our student teachers into the work we're doing, because they are going to end up in all of these different areas across Minnesota. And so how do we give them all of these tools that they're not getting in their classroom at their university? How can we give them those tools? How do they see urban education? How are they seeing all this great work we're doing? And it's very positive for them, and I think everybody wins when our student teachers are getting good experiences in our schools.
And again, there's positive and negative, like I tell the staff all the time. There's good news, bad news, right? And my people are from Park Rapids, Minnesota. Actually, my grandfather was superintendent of schools up there, and so there's positives and negatives in rural and urban, and obviously we have a lot of rich resources in the metro area, and and zoos and museums and all sorts of great things right here. But it's different in the rural area, so it's really knowing that school community. And again, at Washington, we don't have a football team. I mean, we haven't got 9 soccer teams, but we don't have a football team. That's just our student population. If you go to small town America on a Friday night in the fall, the whole community, even if they have kids or don't have kids, they're at the football game, or they are listening to it on the radio. So the community really, we talk about the community supporting the school. They really, you might not be able to get Chinese at Park Rapids High School, maybe they do now, but or some of these different opportunities, but they have different challenges, but a lot of different opportunities. So again, it's just really knowing that school community. But like Christine was saying, it's teacher collaboration, and now with technology, we're doing some stuff with technology. You can collaborate virtually, right? So rather than sitting around a table in a meeting, if there's one Spanish teacher in each building, they can collaborate virtually and do some of this best practice work virtually, rather than just having to physically meet in different places. So again, it's just knowing that school community and developing a program that'll help the kids be successful there.
Okay, work on anti-racism training in the district has been in the news in St. Paul. Can you say what benefits come from this training and how you are supporting anti-racism work with your teachers?
Well, I think we mentioned we have all of our staff are doing Beyond Diversity. It gives us a common language. We at our school, we've brought down, we're talking about race with our kids, elementary. We're talking about it. We're bringing it into, we want kids know what, who they are, and we have to have those courageous conversations. Usually the adults that are more fearful about speaking about it than the kids are. Mm-hmm. For us, we know that the work that we've been doing in Beyond Diversity is a step, and teachers want to do more, and we want to learn more. And I know I had mentioned that we wrote a grant for Innocent Classroom. That's where I know we need to go in our staff. How do I, keep going with this journey? What does it look like? How does it apply? So I think it's just, you're not done with the journey. You're continuing on, and it's becoming. And I think we're all in different places. Our teachers, ourselves.
I think what I'm noticing more and more is about the students. The student voice is so crucial, and I'm learning more that there's structures now that we can actually bring some structures into our school, where students then can be a very key component of that anti-racist work. We have 2 different student groups right now that are growing as we speak. One is mostly of seniors who came together this year. They're called Project We Are Heard, and they'll actually have open mic or they'll do a number of things. It could be anything related in our community or in our school, but it's to help us all get better and better at understanding ourselves better and the people we serve. And so it's telling the narratives, it's creating that space, and I think we're now getting better and better at that, but thank goodness we have students who are leading that. And so this other program called Dare to Be Real is a new program that you'll see it at Hopkins, you'll see it in Minneapolis in some schools. Harding has it, Como has it, I'm not sure other schools, but this is another program that has a structure to it. It has tenets that students can look at. They sign on, they have to commit, and there's leadership development right there. They all become student leaders, but really their main role is to really promote anti-racism and help us get better at it school-wide and community-wide.
And I think too, just especially working with a staff that's predominantly white and as a white male school leader, just understanding some of the background that some of our students come to school from, and having some of the staff of color in our building kind of educate us, because again, I've worked in Washington, for the past 18 years or so, and driven down Rice Street. I've never been pulled over by the police. I mean, why would I be pulled over the police driving to work? Well, if you talk to our African American staff members, especially African American males, all of them have been pulled over. And again, it's not because St. Paul is a racist city or et cetera, et cetera. It's just institutional racism that's a part of it. But it's having the tools, the equity work is having the tools to look at it and knowing that we are part of institutional racism. And so how are we starting to bring some of those barriers down? And if you're not having a conversation about race now, in the last year or two, I mean, you're missing half of what's going on in this country. And so to give teachers the tools to not be afraid of that, but to have open discussion and open dialogue about, hey, what's going on in this country? And and giving students the opportunity to voice their opinions rather than just being kind of, we're just going to be working on, who wrote the Constitution or whatever. I mean, this is what's going on in kids' lives, and this is what's going on in our country. And as an educational institution, we have to be part of that.
And I just wanted to add to that, we've done a lot of work at Como on the racial equity work, and as I stated earlier, we're finding that it's making a really huge difference in teacher practices in the classroom, because part of the work is really for us to examine ourselves of who we are and what we bring to the table, because as teachers, we stand in front of students and we deliver lessons and support student learning. So if we don't know our students and we don't know ourselves, then how are we going to know that how and what we're delivering is impacting student learning? And so those are the pieces and the tools that the district is giving us to have those deep conversations about who we are and who our students are, has really provided just deep conversations to help us change systems and interrupt systems that perpetuate inequity for our students. And so we've been able to really look at some of the practices in the building, what's working, what's not working. Just because we say we need to have a straight line walking down the hall, what's the purpose for that? So we're really examining some of those pieces that are really not working for our students and tweaking some of those pieces to better support our students.
Okay, we have one last question. What role does parent leadership play, if any? For example, site councils, equity committees, teams.
For us this year, we've had a PTO and we're having more success. We're offering Bring Your Parent to School Days as part of our McKnight work. We've been offering pre-K through 2, and we're actually expanding this model next year because we're getting much more participation where we can have our parents come in and actually get into the classrooms and see what their kids are doing, and then come back and have an honest conversation about what is it they're doing, how can I help at home, what does this look like, and also giving our parents tools so that they can ask the questions of the teachers that they need to ask. So for us, that's one thing.
Are they in any capacity, though, helping with school programming or any school
We have parent input on, for example, our skip plans, our family engagement plans, but I think the site councils, as we used to have, don't really exist anymore.
Yeah, I think, our parents are always available when we need their support and their input. So when we call on them, they're always willing and able to be present. I think part of the racial equity work that we've been examining in the building is really the parental involvement piece. And what does that look like, sound like, and feel like? And we're getting a better understanding that parent involvement for maybe our white parents is different than parent involvement for my Hmong parents, for my Korean parents, and for my African American parents. So what does that look like in terms of parent engagement? And because sometimes we have this holistic understanding of parent engagement means you have to volunteer in the building, you have to be present, you have to do these things, but reaching out to our families and getting a better understanding of parent engagement and what does that look like, sound like, and feel like, and how are our parents supporting our students, and how do we foster that relationship to support the students so to answer that question, I don't, my parents have daytime jobs, they're not able to come in and volunteer ongoing, but they're there when we need them, we call them, we communicate with them, they're present for events. We have a parent academy class that the district is part of the district initiative, and our parents come to those sessions to learn more about how to support their students and learn more about education so that they know how to ask the right questions and access different resources that are in the district and in the community to support their students. So we have those courses available for parents, and our parents come and participate in those.
Well, we've already run a little over time, so I want to thank you again very much for coming. Very enlightening. Thank you so much.